like to call to order the Monday, June 18th, 2018 meeting of the Monona City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Wood.
Here.
Alder Kitzlar.
Here.
Alder Poor.
Here.
Alder Groupie.
Here.
Alder Moore.
Here.
Alder Spade.
Here.
Mayor O'Connor.
Here. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the May 21st, or I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong agenda, the June 4th meeting? Any comments or changes?
I had one change.
Alderwood?
In the second paragraph under new business, states the Public Works Committee meeting would be June 16th, and it was actually June 6th.
Okay, anything else? All in favor of approving the minutes as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Next up is appearances. First on the agenda, Robin Schmidt. We have a proclamation recognizing Robin Schmidt. If you could come up to the mic, Robin. As most of you probably know, Robin elected not to run for re-election to the county board this past spring, and Tanya Buckingham is taking her place, and we just want to recognize Robin's 10 years of service to the city of Monona. With this proclamation. Whereas Monona resident Robin Schmidt served as District 24 supervisor on the Dane County Board since April 15, 2008, and whereas after serving for 10 years, Robin Schmidt did not seek re-election for a sixth term, choosing instead to allow a new generation of leaders with new ideas to serve the residents of Monona and Madison's East Side. And whereas Robin Schmidt served her years on the Dane County Board while also raising 2 children and working full-time for the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection and for the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. And whereas as a board supervisor, Robin Schmidt displayed a commitment to public engagement and was described by her colleagues as a quiet, compassionate leader who touched other people's lives in a profound way in the process of leading. And whereas Robin Schmidt was also a mentor to her colleagues, especially her female colleagues, including Tanya Buckingham, her successor on the Dane County Board. And whereas Robin Schmidt's time on the county board included a focus on public works and transportation and the redevelopment of Alliant Energy Center, she was also a tireless proponent of regional transit improvements. And whereas Robin Schmidt helped create the county's Sustainable Management and Renewable Technologies SMART Fund, which provides supplemental funds to projects in order to incorporate energy efficiency and sustainable measures. And whereas Robin Schmidt represented Monona's large senior population, many of whom live on fixed incomes, by fighting for budgets that met people's needs while minimizing tax increases, especially during difficult economic times. And whereas Robin Schmidt also served the Monona community through her time volunteering for the Monona Farmers Market and the Friends of the Monona Senior Center. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Mary Kay O'Connor, Mayor, and on behalf of the City Council, hereby recognize Robin Schmidt for 10 years of dedicated service to the residents of the City of Monona as their representative on the Dane County Board, and thank her for her many contributions to the Monona community. Signed in the City of Monona, Dane County, Wisconsin, this 18th day of June, 2018, Mary Kay O'Connor, Mayor. So thank you so much, Robin, for all you've done for Monona. And here's something else for Pat, because Robin's moving, so I'm sure she appreciates more stuff.
But yeah, and I just want to say it was an honor and a privilege to represent the community, and I'm not sure I really know this person that you're describing here.
It's pretty impressive.
It's overwhelming, but thank you very much, and I wish you all well, and as you said, the movers come tomorrow morning, so we've got a little bit of work to do at our house, but Monona is a big part of who we are as a family. My children, raising my children here has been unbelievable, and being able to represent the community and all the children and the families here, and then also to see a new generation of leaders coming forward. It's been a privilege, and I'm very proud. And by the way, tomorrow evening, the Geylang Energy Center has an open house. You're all welcome to go and help get the look for what the vision, the future of the Geylang Energy Center is from 5 till 7. Couldn't help put that plug.
No, I know. I plan to be there. So.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Robin.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Next up is appearances, and how we're going to handle this is we're going to have 2 appearances now, one about an item that is not on the agenda, and then another about another agenda item, but to help Kristy Schilling manage her time with her children. And then we'll go on to the rest of the consent agenda, and then we'll be coming to the Winnaker Road question, and the people who want to speak about that will speak then, before we consider that. So first up, Robert Proctor would like to speak about Gateway Green flooding.
Hi, thank you for letting me come. I'm glad it's tonight. My name's Robert Proctor. I live at 6101 Gateway Green. It's the bottom of the hill, if anybody knows Gateway Green. I'm glad I'm here tonight and not Saturday morning, because I maybe have been a bigger jerk Saturday morning after I had to clean up the flood that went through my house. And there's people here that get emails from me that might be more snippety than I'm going to be tonight. But on Gateway Green, for what I'm told, at least 25 years, but one of my neighbors told me it's been 40 years, there's been flooding. And basically what it is that as there's more development, the storm sewer pipes can't handle it. And they all come together right near my house. And then when you get a big downpour, they back up, and the way it's designed is that it will go over the yards. And there's even a curb cut to allow it to go into the yards. The problem is my house is right in the way of that river. And that river gets to be so strong, there'll literally be a foot of water out into the street, and it will take my garbage cans away. Full garbage cans will flow off the side of my house, around into the back, and then the river continues through the back. And when it's bad, it goes right through my garage. About 8 to 12 inches will go through my garage and into the side door and into my house. Doug was there Saturday, and I wanted to say thank you very much, because it helps a lot just knowing somebody cares at all, because this has been going on for a long time. And he was there to see the rapid remediation guy come in, who knows me my name, and said, yeah, I remember pumping out the mud and water last time. And it's happened 3 to 5 times every year. Gets a little bit worse every year with climate change. And the problem is that it's clear my basement's got mold or something in it. There's been water in it so many times. It's clear that when this is all said and done, I'm going to have to rip out all of the drywall, rip out the floor. And I'm not looking for any money from the city. I'm not looking to sue the city. I'm not looking for a sorry. I'm not looking for anything. The only problem is I can't fix my problem until the city's stormwater stops coming through my house. And it's the city's stormwater. And I understand, and the city had a report done in 2016, and it talked about a number of different options that would be 600,000 to 800,000. And instead, they threw in another option that the city should actually consider buying my house and turning it into a stormwater pond. And so that's kind of how serious it is that that your own engineer, outside engineer, would suggest that. And I'm not, I'd love you to buy my house and I'll go start over, but I'm not even expecting that. I just need it to end. I can't. Tonight, for example, when you're all sleeping, there's supposed to be a storm tonight. My wife and I will be sitting there wondering if we've got to quickly get all the towels down in front of the door that's in the garage, whether we ought to open up the garage door, make sure everything's up, open the back of the garage door so that the water can flow through, and then hope that it doesn't get inside and get in under the basement and stuff so that we have to pay rapid remediation to come out again. And every 3 to 5 times a summer, every summer for 8 years. And people have been complaining about it for a long time. And I feel like we get short-shifted. Should have done what the people on Pirate Island and all of them did. But I mean, it just something needs to be done, and not in 2 years or 3 years. I need something done now, whether it's grading, whether it's fixing it. Otherwise it's just become too much. We just can't deal anymore. So I wanted to get it to your attention. I'd like it to become an agenda item at some point with a solution, and so then I can fix my house. I'm not asking anybody to pay for anything other than your own stormwater problem, so that I can make my problem go away. So I really appreciate Doug's taking a lot of time, Doug Wood. He's taken a little bit of abuse from me, and I appreciate that a lot. He's about the calmest person in the world, so I appreciate that a ton. And the Public Works Department has taken some grief from me. So has Bill Cole, but he can handle it. So, but I really hope that you guys can do something for me. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Kristy Schilling, who would like to speak in favor of the Mr. Brews item, approving Mr. Brews liquor license.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here today. And thank you, Mary. I can tell when a mother runs the council and makes provisions for a mom with kids in the library. I just wanted to speak. Kristy Schilling. I live at 4502 Gordon Avenue. I'm the CEO of the Monona Eastside Business Alliance. I have come to know Jay Clemens, the sole owner of Mr. Brews Tap House in Monona, over the few years. He runs a great operation there. He is very involved in the community. He's a member of our organization. He's sponsored events. He steps up to support us and many other community events. Often, I probably see his name on events and festivals more than any other business, I would say, bar in the area. I consistently hear compliments at my office about him and his staff. I'm also the president of the Business Watch, and I always read the citations in the paper, so that keeps me busy. But I've never seen Jay listed there, and I've seen all the other bars in that. So his staff is also very mature. They predominantly live in Monona, so Jay is responsible for providing their livelihoods as the sole owner of Mr. Brews. This establishment also serves as the hotel, restaurant, and bar for the American. And I have spoken with American about this issue, and they're completely supportive of him having expanded offerings at his restaurant. I feel like the Mr. Brews downtown closed. I don't know if you know that, but they saw a lot of pressure with neighboring establishments having full liquor license and them not. So I feel like Mr. Brews in Monona is probably experiencing a similar issue. When a group of people go out to drink, if there's one person that doesn't like to drink beer or wine, that entire group will go next door and go somewhere else. So I feel as that development is a new development in Monona, and he being the first tenant in there, if he were unable to stay open, that would be a real step back, I feel, for us as a business community, and a poor precedent to set with that new development. I would also say, I heard someone mention that liquor is liquor, and I just wanted to say all liquor is not created equal. I know there are some bars in town where people go there and their whole plan is to do a lot of shots. Mr. Brews, what I've seen of his menu and what he's looking to serve, the more craft cocktails and artisan liquors, it's something that you go and you sip one, and you sit there for a long period of time. I'm a person that does that. So and I appreciate the taste. I'm not there to do several shots. And I think that's the clientele he's looking to serve, is more of an executive clientele. The other needs are being met in our community by other bars, and that's not what Jay is looking to do. So I just want to speak in favor of him receiving approval on his liquor license, and I will say the license review committee did an amazing job of putting him through some rigorous vetting. So I feel like he's deserving, and he's really proven that he runs a really solid operation. Thank you.
Thank you. There is no public hearing tonight. Next item is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item G1, unfinished business. Item A, consideration of ordinance 6-18-700, establishing temporary no parking on Winnequa Road, put forth by the Ad hoc Pedestrian and Bicycle Committee. I think, Dan, first of all, we're going to have the appearances from people who would like to comment on this. We are going to limit comments to 3 minutes, and Attorney Cole is going to be timing them because we have quite a few people who would like to speak. First of all, I am going to read people who have registered and do not choose to speak. Julie Burns of 6103 Winnequa Road, in favor. Andrew Gaskin, perhaps?
That's me.
Okay.
In favor with reservations.
6108 Winnequa, in favor with reservations. Mark Provenzano, 4222 Winnequa Road, against. Mike Godfrey, 6216 Winnequa Road, against. Judy Schachter, 708 Moigara, in favor. Michael Schachter, 708 Moigara, in favor. Kurt and Nikki Stute of 6003 Winnequa Road, against. So I think that's all of them. Okay, then in terms of people who would like to speak, first of all, Kathleen Lightburn would like to speak for informational purposes only. If you could please state your name and address.
I'm Kathy Lightborn, I live at...
I'm sorry, could you speak into the mic? Thanks.
I'm Kathy Lightborn, I live at 5900 Winnequa Road. I've been to the previous council meeting and the Public Works meeting. I had 4 questions at the Public Works meeting, and I didn't feel like any of them were adequately answered, so hopefully tonight I can get the answers so I can get information. One, I'd like to ask if this change is motivated by data or complaints. The second is, if it's motivated by data, could somebody please give me information in addition to what I got from the police department, that 1 to 2 accidents happen in Monona per year, pedestrian bicycle. He did not have anything specific to South Winnequa Road. Third, if it's motivated by complaints, and I'm using the term complaints because that's what this council used the last time I was here. Can somebody tell me kind of the percentage of complaints, like is it 10% of the community that's complained, 1%, and or some sort of a number of complaints, and then also the nature of the complaints. Is it about speed, parking, trash cans, bump outs, whatever? Sort of delineate it somehow for me. And fourth, most importantly, and hopefully we have an answer to this tonight, how are you going to evaluate if this change is successful or not? What are you going to base it on, this temporary change? If we have very few accidents now, are you going to base it on we have 0 accidents? If we have 1, is the change no good? That's what I'm trying to get from you, from everybody, and I didn't get any of those answers at the Public Works. So hopefully I can get that tonight.
Next up is Todd Schultz, who would like to speak against.
My name is Todd Schultz, and I live at 6206 Winnequa Road. I'm going to say ditto. And another thing that wasn't brought up at the last meeting is I don't think anybody's talked about how it's going to affect our property values, and I think that's also a huge consideration that a lot of us should think about also. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Sonny Schubert would like to speak against.
Wait, we meant cheaters. Sonny Schubert, 6107 Winnequa Road. When I last spoke to you on June 4th, I was dismayed by the lack of data presented in support of the parking ban. Alderwood and Public Works Director Stefani indicated that the ban was prompted by complaints about parking on Winnequa, but were unable to enumerate those complaints. So I did your homework for you. According to the Monona Police Department, there have been 53 complaints about parking on Winnequa Road between 2010 and today. However, the vast majority were in the 6300 block, which is south of the area to be covered by the ban. The banned area spans 5800 to the end of the 6200 block. Only 9 complaints were in the affected area, and 2 of those concerned parking on the east side of the street, which has always been illegal. 2 came from my next-door neighbor, who's complaining that her other next-door neighbor is parking too close to her driveway. So there have been 7 complaints in 8.5 years. This does not sound like a monumental problem to me. Additionally, the city provided me with 5 complaints filed with other city officials in the past 2.5 years. Of those, 4 mentioned vegetation encroaching on the bike path. The 5th complained about a bush blocking the intersection at Owen and Winnequa, and it was blocking a motorist's view of oncoming traffic. Only 1 even mentioned parking on the south side of or on the west side of the street as creating a hazard for bicyclists, and even she did not suggest a total parking ban. I believe a total ban is overkill. How about banning on-street parking from 7 to 9 and 4 to 7 Monday through Friday? This would cover peak commuting hours. I know some who support the ban insist it must include weekends because of the increased bike traffic, but car traffic is dramatically reduced on Saturdays and Sundays. If you insist on a total ban, could there be a provision for residents to apply for a special permit on occasion? With a total ban in effect, I and my neighbors will not be able to host holiday gatherings, graduation parties, garage sales, bridal showers, baby showers, backyard weddings, political fundraisers, Thanksgiving dinners, not even well-attended Tupperware parties. I hope this information helps the council come to a decision driven by data and not just sing along with me. Feelings, nothing more than feelings. And by the way, I emailed this data to every member of the city
3 minutes
council,
is up.
and not one bothered to respond to me. I just wonder, is this how you treat all constituents? Thank you.
Thank you, Sonny. Next up is Claire Geylang, who would like to speak in favor.
Thank you.
State your name and address, please.
My name is Claire Geylang. I live at 6110 Winnequa. That's a very hard act to follow. I moved to Monona in part because my husband and I are avid cyclists. So I do commute by bicycle during the winter and the summer. And I'm familiar with the bump outs along Monona and Winnequa as a cyclist before I became a resident. I'm also a parent. And this winter, when I was home with my infant daughter, I spent a lot of time looking out the window at the bike path. And I spend a lot of time watching the cyclists and cycling on that road, trying to go with my young children to the park on that road. I am also a motorist on that road. And I can tell you that I witness some very dangerous situations on that road. I've been waiting for police with a cyclist who was pinned by a car right out in front of my house and honked at and brushed by the car. I've seen people trying to navigate around the postman, trash cans. I've myself commuted on the bump outs where, you know, they're icy and rutted. It's quite dangerous. And so I don't know if the parking ban is the best solution, but I know that if Monona cares about public safety, certainly I care about public safety on the street where I live. I think that something should probably be done to improve the safety for everyone, including motorists, but also pedestrians, runners, and cyclists. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is Randy VanderHeiden, who would like to speak against, and after that will be Rochelle Miller. So you're ready.
Hey, good evening. My name is Randy VanderHeiden. I live at 6219 Winnequa Road. I've been there since 2003. And I also have little children that are under 5, so I understand the safety problem. Excuse me, on Winnequa Road. I'm here to tell you that reducing the parking on Winnequa is not going to solve the perceived problems with bikers. It's not going to solve that problem. It actually creates a whole nother problem. The problem is this. When we're forced to have to park on side streets and we have to walk with our families and our luggage and everything else for every major event that's at our house, we now have to ask our friends and family to cross Winnequa Road. There are no crosswalks. There's no cross lights. There's nothing. So it's actually more dangerous. You're putting more people in danger by asking them to walk blocks and walk across a busy street than today. And I will tell you that I've taken 18 photos. I have them right here. 18 times I took pictures on Winnequa, and I have one car parked on that stretch of the road. So I believe the data was with Sunny, what she gave to us, and I also believe what I see, which means there isn't a problem with parking in Winnequa. I feel like we have a solution in search of a problem is really what it is. And I guess I'm asking you a bunch of questions. My questions are, what are we trying to solve? If it's safety, we're actually creating bigger problems with safety by people walking across a busy road. Speed, we know that that's an issue. We got to solve that. Or is it really an inconvenience for just a couple bikers? That's my question. The second one is who's pushing the agenda. Do they live on Winnequa? Do they live where I live? And I see it every day. I understand the last person who spoke. I get what she's saying. It is a busy road, but most of the people that I've heard about don't live on Winnequa in that stretch that are against it. I will also tell you that I feel like this is being jammed through very quickly. There was a mailing sent out with like 2.5 weeks notice, and then the excuse was the post office doesn't send mail to Madison. I don't even know what it was, but we're county government, local government, I mean, we should be able to not make excuses about mail. We should know how the letters get to our constituents, and we should be able to back that up. My third question is about the data, right? Where's the data? The ad hoc bike committee said they had meeting minutes. There was no meeting minutes. There was nothing provided to anybody. There's no data. The most data I heard was what Sunny provided, which is awesome. Thank you, Sunny. My other question is, what are we measuring? How are we going to measure success? What does success look like? I don't think anybody's been able to tell me that. Somebody said, we're going to measure how much, at the Public Works, it said, you'll have a chance to evaluate how much of an inconvenience it is for you as the person living there. I said, really? That's what I have to evaluate? You can't even give me success criteria? That seemed a little bit odd to me. My last question is, how are we going to police delivery vehicles and mail trucks and UPS? It takes 1 second for an accident to happen. You guys all know that. And they park on Winnequa on the wrong side of the road where there's no parking every day. I see it. How are we going to police them with an already overtaxed police department? So I will tell you that we don't have a
Your
problem
time
with
is up.
parking.
Thank
We
you.
have a problem with speed. Speed is the problem. And the bump outs need to go. Thank you.
you.
Appreciate your time.
Next up is Rochelle Miller, who would like to speak in favor, and after her will be Logan Wandering.
Rochelle Miller, 6013 Winnequa Road. It's been nice going last because I get to hear everybody's points, and they're good ones. I have 2 kids, and I'm a runner. I didn't get a chance to shower, so I don't look so good. But I'm a runner. I walk my dog. I use Winnequa Road probably at least 2-3 times a day. So I have many days not had a place to run by because of vehicles parking in the bike pedestrian lane or cars driving into the bike and pedestrian lane. So I don't feel safe a lot of the times if there's a lot of traffic going through because I just don't trust where people are going to be. So taking a break from the parking on Winnequa would be interesting if you could come up with a plan of what you want to learn from it. And if it means that it slows down traffic, then I'm completely for it. And if it means that it makes it a safer space for people to navigate on foot and by bike and by car, then I'm for it. But I think we need to have a plan of what you want to discover and to make sure it's a successful move or not. I would like you to strongly consider offering permits for people to apply for. We had our driveway redone about maybe 2-3 years ago, and concrete trucks do need to get close to be able to work on to put in the cement, or if you're doing big projects on your home. And if you can't have vehicles in front of your home, that's a very big problem for homeowners. I also think if you did it where you limited the time, like Sunny suggested, where we had limited or zero parking during the busy times, which were when we're getting our kids on the bus to go to school and when school's out, I think that would be a nice compromise so the people who live on the street could still use it on off hours. Another consideration with the bump outs, and this is maybe a little bit aside, but if you eliminate the bump outs, we have no place for our children to stand and wait for the bus other than in the street. So just a consideration when you think about that. I'm not saying they're a good option, but it's something you need to consider. And I did it before my time's up, right?
Thank you. Logan Wandering. And after that will be Tina Sugar.
Hello, my name is Logan Wandering. I live at 6217 Winnequa. And I really have 3 points, kind of public usage, safety, and then kind of due diligence. So with public usage at the Public Works Committee, it was kind of implied that it's public space and we need to kind of, consider that as the property owner, that we were intending on using it for private space. And that's not the case. The public that parks there, that's us. That's our friends, that's our family, and using it for parking is still public space. So I just wanted to make that point. And even if it is one time, which kind of Randy pointed out that there's not that many cars that are parked there, one time a year when you do have that party is going to be impactful if you're ending up having your friends and family having to walk across the street. The second kind of point is safety. And so I really want to end up kind of calling out that I think everybody at the Public Works Committee thought that speed was like the major issue. And if we look at some of the research that kind of has been presented on the mymonona.com, with the GSA applications class, the university partnership and the reports and some of the presentations that are on YouTube, a book, Happy City by Charles Montgomery. There's an Eric Bay and a Weinlau Lee. Basically, summarize kind of the findings from my interpretation of them, and that kind of speed and volume are kind of the major contributors to kind of accidents and kind of safety. One of the things that kind of came out is a kind of a quote from that kind of research that I did was that, quote, however, it has been shown that the drivers travel at the speed that they feel comfortable with regardless of the posted speed. All that research ended up kind of coming up with recommendations. Parking banning was not one of them. There was redoing the intersection on Bridge and Winnequa. There was kind of some other kind of signage, but parking, banning parking on that stretch was not anything that came out of the recommendations from the university study in 2016 that I saw, which kind of gives down to kind of the due diligence aspect of it. We have no idea what the actual true problem is because none of the data was actually presented, at least at the Public Works. And it seems that it is opinion based and that we didn't have any information to determine whether or not it's going to actually improve safety or actually hinder it. And so there's a kind of a leading theory that when you have narrower roads, that speed actually goes down. So if there are a lot of parked cars that are actually on the street, if that is going to actually improve safety, then by removing them, it has the effect of widening the road, which would end up having the opposite effect. But we don't have any data. We don't have a study that is actually kind of doing any type of scientific method to say, hey, we're going to make this change. Here's the problem. Here's the hypothesis. Here's going to be how we measure that. And yes, we actually improved or we actually hurt the actual safety aspect of it. That doesn't exist. Two of the quotes from that Public Works Committee that I would like to end up calling out was, one, this is being shoved down our throat from a committee member, and two, this is bad government. We have not done our due diligence, and I would expect that elected officials, especially at the local level, end up actually considering that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Tina Sugar. Who would like to speak against?
Tina Sugar, 6216 Winnequa Road. I've only been in Monona 2 years, but I live right at the end of Bridge Road, and I can tell you that I'm going to speak on less points than I was going to bring up because all these people have already said so much. There's no data, which as a public school teacher, I live by data in a bad way. So wanting data seems really wrong, but there is none, and so I would really like to see the data, as many people have asked. Again, I did the same thing that I can't remember which person here. I took pictures all morning on a Saturday morning, and there was literally not a car there, so I just kept going out all day. No car, an entire Saturday, not one car parked there all day, the busiest day of the week for bicyclists, no cars the whole time. And then I also want to talk about how the races and things that come through actually cause more issues with bicyclists having to go into the road. The one that just happened on Sunday, we sat out front and watched all these bicyclists that weren't a part of the race that were all over the road. And I sent a letter to the board. And the biggest issue that I feel is not being, that intersection at Bridge and Winnequa is the hottest mess in the history of life. And the fact that the bicyclists come backwards off of the bike path into oncoming traffic and will literally go like 8-9 houses in the wrong way with bicyclists coming. I took pictures. I sat for 15 minutes and took video, and there were in 15 minutes 6 groups of bikes came the wrong way into other bikes and into oncoming traffic in 15 minutes. That is the safety problem. The fact that all these cars are merging and bikes and walkers are all merging on this little piece of sidewalk and all going the wrong direction and all over the place. I drive from the library, my kiddo volunteers here, and almost every time there's a bicyclist that has to come over across in front of me before I turn into my driveway at 6216. That intersection where people stop when there's no stop, horns all day long. If you lived at the intersection, you'd be amazed at the horns of people going that aren't supposed to be going. That's the problem. And the bicyclists all over the place. I ride the bikes. My kids ride their bikes up and down. I love living in Monona. After living in Maple Bluff for 17 years, being here where there's all this action and being on the bike, I think being on the bike path is great. But I do want to be able to park those rare occasions. We have a wedding coming in August. I don't know where my people are going to park when they come for all these different wedding things that we have going on. It's rare occasions that we have a car parked out there, but there are rare occasions that cars are parked out there. So this really isn't a problem. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Curtis Jones would like to speak in favor.
Hi, Curtis Jones, 6102 Bridge Road. I guess, I don't know what the best thing to do about Winnequa Road is, but I know that absent any other options on the table, I'm for the idea of banning parking on the road. I wanted to spend the rest of my time, I guess 2.5 minutes or so, reading an article I found online written by a person, Travis, from July 2nd, 2011, titled, "No, Seriously, Were They Drunk When They Designed This?" There is one stretch of road nearby that has been the butt of many jokes, the cause for rolling of eyes and dozens upon dozens of different hearings, committee meetings, discussions, council agenda items, etc. It is the physical and permanent manifestation of ideas gone wrong, of late-night compromises, and the idea that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Or maybe that should read, "The road to Monona was paved with good intentions." The street in question is Winnequa Road, a 0.6-mile stretch of busy suburban roadway. It is the most heavily trafficked residential street in all of Monona, and various police studies have shown that traffic moves disproportionately faster along it due to it being a prime arterial road for exiting Monona. It is also heavily used by cyclists circling Lake Monona, as well as walkers, joggers, etc. Lastly, the houses along the west side of the street have lake access, meaning that they cost about double what other houses in the neighborhood cost. It was the ultimate mashup of wants, needs, desires, and influence. From what I've been able to piece together from snide comments and sarcastic remarks at various council meetings, the design of the roadway was a heated, contentious affair with numerous hearings, committees, public input, and finally a late-night mayor-brokered compromise that tried to bring everyone together in a kumbaya moment. The engineering studies and plans were modified to represent the will of the council and mayor, and construction began. The only problem, I'm pretty sure, is that no one bothered to run the plans by a cyclist. The result of this late-night amateur engineering session was as follows: a narrow roadway for cars, a bike lane that forces cyclists up onto sidewalk-like bump-outs, and a parking lane that's too narrow for a car to actually park inside of it. So just stop me when my time's out here. Designed originally as a traffic calming measure, these bump out into the roadway to narrow the road and create the illusion of a choke point, causing drivers to slow down and drive through it more cautiously than they normally would have. Unfortunately, it requires the cyclist to turn right to get up on it, traverse across driveways, and then proceed to get off of it. And of course, there's an elevation change as well, to say nothing of the fact that cyclists should not be riding on sidewalks. It's extremely disconcerting on a road bike and downright impossible if you're towing a trailer with something important in it, like a small child or a case of beer. However, since they are designed as choke points, there is no place for a cyclist to ride other than in the middle of the road, which most motorists aren't expecting. The Winnequa bike and parking lanes combined, 10 foot, excluding the gutter. Basically 1.5 to 2 feet below the bare minimum and 3
Okay,
foot
that's
less
your
than
time.
optimal. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else like to speak?
I registered to speak. And in favor of reservations and commentary.
Okay, you're,
Andrew Gaston is my name.
I'm sorry, your slip must have gotten doubled up with another one.
Okay.
Yeah, come on up.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
I guess you wrote it,
I did
said
both.
depends. Yeah, okay.
Okay, my name is Andrew Gaston. I live at 6108 Winnequa Road. I've got 2 young children. I moved to this stretch of roadway with a young child, knowing that the road was dangerous and stupidly designed, but also knowing that there was parking available on the other side. So I want to speak on a matter of things here. One, I want to echo everybody's comment. Where is the data? What are we basing this decision on? How are we going to analyze it? If we make this decision now to have at least a temporary parking ban, can we please revisit it, reanalyze it, talk about it before one person then locks that in indefinitely? Two, I don't think the real problem is parking. The real problem is the road width, and there's too many users condensed into too narrow of space. I have a 5-year-old and a 10-year-old. It is scary as hell riding your bicycle on that street. I will ride with them for about a block and a half on the northbound lanes, and then I take a side street and I find an alternate route. In doing so, we're passed by cars that are like 6 inches away sometimes. The parking lane, however, I use as a 2-way pedestrian lane. Whether we are walking north or we are walking south, we will use the parking lane because we have a greater buffer protecting us from the vehicular traffic. Sometimes I would say that even the parked cars add some additional safety, because whether my kids are on a bike or whether we're walking, we can tuck in behind the cars and have an additional buffer. Back to data, and even though we have not experienced a tragic accident, that does not mean that the road is not incredibly dangerous as designed. I don't want that to happen before we then are compelled to make a decision. But just because people aren't crashing, just because people aren't running over kids, just because there are not a lot of bicycle, pedestrian, vehicle conflicts, does not mean that the road is not primed for that. It's basically engineered to create a much higher chance of conflict than it should be. I would support a parking ban that is temporary, that will be reassessed. I would support it, like Sunny suggested, that you look at the busiest times that the road is used. All this would take would be signage. If you're going to ban parking altogether now, but not move the lines in the road, how is that creating more space for anybody? How is that going to make it safer? Right now, put a sign up, have a test period, don't allow parking during rush hour, reevaluate it in the future, and make this part of a greater comprehensive plan. I will pay half the cost of a sidewalk on my side of the street. I hope everybody else would too. I want to be able to walk. I want to be able to ride my bike. Thank you.
Time is up. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Would you like to fill out a sheet?
I did fill one out, it's said.
But you said.
I wasn't going to speak, but from what I've heard, I just can't sit here.
Okay, your
Can I
name?
speak?
Michael Schachter, I think.
All right.
Right, is that correct? Okay, come on up. You have 3 minutes.
Michael Schachter, 708 Wagara Road, except for two people who spoke. Every other speaker had a Winnequa Road address. Interesting. Number two, I want to speak, and this is my last point, I want to speak about the data that has come up so often in this meeting. There's a story called The Emperor's New Clothes, where people are lining up on a street, and the emperor, who has been taken advantage of, is driving down that street without any clothes. The people from the town have been told that if they can't see the Emperor's New Clothes, then they are not worthy of their station in life. The data is the vehicle, the 20-foot vehicle that anybody in this room could look at. A 20-foot vehicle with 10 cones on one side, 10 cones on the other side, making the thing 40 feet. If you can't see that, now the thing says, then you're not worthy of your station in life. If you can't see that, I think maybe you're not worthy of having your people over to watch the Miss America pageant.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. I'm going to read the list of emails we've gotten regarding this. Against, and this is, some of these will have, are in the minutes tonight and others aren't. So I'm just going to read everything we've received. June 3rd and June 17th, these are all against. Mark Provenzano, 4222 Winnequa. June 3rd, Tina Sugar and Mike Godfrey, 6216 Winnequa. June 4th, Margaret Brunig Clark, 6211 Winnequa. June 4th, Kelly Unke and Mike Paulus, 6111 Winnequa. June 4th, Jake Smith, lives on Winnequa but didn't give his address. June 5th, Justin Randall, 5907 Winnequa. June 6th, Sonny Schubert, 6107 Winnequa. June 8th, Kathy Thomas, 5903 Winnequa. June 10th, Barb Sansberry, 1306 Neponset. June 10th, Sherry Anderson, 1308 Neponset. June 13th and June 18th, Suzanne Wade, 6113 Midwood Avenue. June 17th, Sue Provenzano, 4222 Winnequa Road. June 18th, Kurt and Nicole Stute, 6003 Winnequa. June 18th, Laura Liston, lives on Winnequa but didn't give her address. Finally, June 18th, Kimberly Gorishanaz, 6217 Winnequa Road. Then we've received these emails in favor. June 3rd, Curtis Jones, 6102 Bridge Road. June 4th, Julie Burns, 6013 Winnequa Road. June 5th, Claire Geylang, 6110 Winnequa Road. June 6th, Rochelle Miller, 6013 Winnequa. June 8th, Megan Sabarich, 104 Parkway. June 10th, Mary Poseen, 4509 Midmore Road. And finally, June 18th, Sue Carr of 4209 Winnequa Road. We've also heard from Jan Marshall Fox, 5805 Winnequa Road, with comments about what she sees as possible causes of problems in that section of the road. So that's everything we have received. Okay, is item number 1A, consideration of ordinance 6-18-700 establishing temporary no parking on Winnequa Road, put forth by the Ad hoc Pedestrian and Bicycle Committee. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Alder Spade, are you still there? I think we've okay. Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Stefani.
Thank you, Mayor. This appears tonight for the second read of the ordinance establishing temporary no parking on Winnequa Road. Winnequa Road from Bridge Road to Owen Road, the travel lanes, bike lanes, and parking lane are considered to be too narrow to safely accommodate the various types of traffic this section of road often sees. Residential and contractor vehicles are parked in the southbound parking lane. Those vehicles often encroach on the bike lane, which forces foot traffic and bike traffic out into the vehicle travel lanes of the road, making it unsafe for all. The Pedestrian and Bicycle Ad hoc Committee has recommended temporary no parking be established along this southbound lane on Winnequa Road from Owen Road to Bridge Road up to September 30th, 2018. It should be noted that on June 6th, 2018, the Public Works Committee did not provide a recommendation for approval due to lack of supporting information and not enough time to consider all the information. So with that, back to council.
Alder Wood.
I've got a PowerPoint that I put together with the assistance of staff and also Alder Kerr and the mayor. So we'll go get it plugged in and they need to do, there we go. Okay. So like I said, this is something that put together as the chair of the committee, but also with the assistance of the mayor and Alder Kur and city staff. And I think hopefully it will answer some of the questions that have been asked. So the first sort of point here is that basically almost everybody drives. Pretty much all bikers, or nearly all bikers, also drive. Walkers drive, so forth and so on. In other words, it's the same people. So the quote from Pogo, which you have to be old to remember that cartoon, "We have met the enemy and he is us." Why are we only addressing parking? Just want to make this point clear, and I think I repeat it again later. This is only the first issue being addressed. We realize there's a bunch of other problems with this street. Parking can be addressed relatively quickly and inexpensively. Other issues will be addressed, looking at bump outs, speeding, pedestrians sharing the same street surface with bicyclists and motorcycles. However, those are solutions that are much more costly and will require budgeting in future years. I expect the ad hoc pedestrian bicycle committee to wrap up its work this fall and make its report to the city council with recommendations on these things and a whole lot of other things throughout in other areas of the city. So how did we get here? So first of all, this is actually, you can see in the circle, this is a route that's been used for centuries. It was shown on an 1834 map of Indian trails in this area, and you can see Winnequa Road essentially follows the path of one of those trails. And then in 1848, okay, sorry. So the existing design was selected in 2005, and I was there. We were not drunk, however, we were sleep deprived. It was a long process, over 2 years, lots of public meetings. We ended up approving the design shortly before we adjourned at 1:55 a.m. on Tuesday, December 6th. It was a political compromise by a very divided city council that selected sort of a mishmash of the design elements recommended by the engineer. So what's wrong with parking? First, this gets into a little bit of the data. Who uses South Winnequa Road? There's approximately 80 households on this stretch. Winnequa carried 4,100 motor vehicles per weekday in 2009 between Owen and Bridge. That's tied basically with Nichols for the busiest internal street in the city. It's also on the Lake Monona bike loop and a major bicycle commuter route. City staff did a weekday count last week and came up with a average total of 385 bikers a day using that stretch of Winnequa between the hours of 6:45, I should say, a.m. to 5:30 p.m. So that actually, misses a couple of hours at the end of the day when people would still be biking. And part of that was also done Friday morning when the weather wasn't really conducive to biking. My guess is the actual number would probably be higher than that on a nice summer day, weekday. Several of us also did hand counts. In just 3 hours on Saturday morning, we counted 184 bikers between the hours of 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. in the 6100 block of Winnequa. So if you extrapolate that out, I think it's easily going to be very conservatively 600 bikers, more likely closer to 800 or 900 bikers, which makes that's more bikers on that road on a weekend than on almost all city streets carry motor vehicles. So Winnequa Road kind of collects traffic, and the farther south it goes, the more traffic it carries, the more bikers and especially the more motor vehicles. Up at the north end, it varies. It's around 1,000 to 1,500. Farther north, traffic gets added several different points. I think one is actually Winnequa Trail, where traffic comes in from Belle Isle and that neighborhood down there. And then more significantly, at Maywood and Owen. And that's how you end up with more than twice as much vehicle traffic at that end of the road than you do at the north end. Parking, as everybody knows, it's already prohibited on South Winnequa between Maywood and Owen Road. And currently parking is allowed only on the west side from Owen to Bridge. The engineer's design back in 2005 actually called for parking bays between Owen and Bridge. That would have required widening the road. My recollection is that there were some residents who objected to that. The council voted it down at the 2005 meeting. So the design adopted was contrary to the recommendations by the engineers. In fact, it was so contrary to the recommendations, they wrote a CYA letter to the city effectively denying responsibility for the design. Just one quote from that: "The recent decision to maintain west side parking south of Owen Road and maintain the street width does not improve the roadway to current safety standards." In other words, we never should have approved this in the first place. And one other quote from their letter, they stated, "I will not be able to seal the plans as being in the public's interest of safety," meaning as a professional engineer registered in the state of Wisconsin, he would not apply his engineer seal to the plans. So what's wrong with allowing parking? Basically, there's not room. The minimum width for parking plus a bike plus a travel lane is 24 feet. That comes from the WSDOT Facilities Design Manual. We have, for southbound Winnequa, 20 feet, a 5-foot bike lane, 6-foot parking, and 9-foot southbound travel lane. And this is one of the things that happens. I agree. A lot of times there's not very many cars parked there. But when there are cars or when there are contractor vehicles parked there, this is one of the things that happens. People get pushed out into traffic. The DOT facility design, bicycle facility design handbook notes that it might be tempting to narrow the parking lane to create more space for the bike lane, which is exactly what we did here. But striping a narrow parking lane does not reduce the width of parked motor vehicles. I don't know I didn't know that DOT actually used irony in their handbooks, but the photograph is out of that same manual, and it's essentially a picture of, it's not on South Winnequa, but it could be, showing what not to do. And that's what we did. They even say 12 feet may be justified, but it's not recommended. We only have 11 feet. The parked vehicles also push pedestrians into that same narrow traffic lane. Or fire trucks or other vehicles get pushed into the opposite lane. There's a picture of another one of the contractors unloading with the ramp. And I know when I used to commute to work on this route, that there were times when the contractors would leave their trailers at the site. They wouldn't necessarily be working there. They would just have it. Their equipment would still be there, and they'd leave the trailer parked there. Just couple more examples of the same kind of situation. So one thing I do want to make it clear, it is the recommendation to prohibit parking is not based on past accident history. It's to prevent future accidents due to the inherent safety hazards created by the unsafe design. This is, again, it's our busiest internal street, not counting Broadway or Monona Drive for motor vehicles, and it's by far the busiest street in the city for bicycles. In fact, it's a very busy street in the region for bicycles. However, that's not to say that accidents don't happen as a result of the parking. This was a distracted driver who apparently tried to drive up. Well, I don't think he tried. He must have drifted over, went partway up that ramp and flipped. So we just put this out for some of the options to address parking. One is the currently proposed 24/7 ban, and then other options that have been discussed about prohibiting it during certain times on weekdays and weekends, and possibly other ideas. And then again, I just want to reemphasize that the other issues will be addressed. And I don't want to, my guess is, the problem is there's not enough room, and we've got everybody, both pedestrians mixing with a lot of cyclists and motor vehicles, and the pedestrians are going to lose in that battle. And so these are some of the things we need to look at, are the speeding, the bump outs, and not having an off-road facility, a sidewalk or a pathway for peds to use. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Alderwood. Did you have anything else to add?
I don't think so.
Okay. Anybody have any comments, questions? Alder Moore? I'm sorry, Alder Moore, and then Alder Spade.
I just want to say, in reference to everyone sitting here, as well as all those people that wrote us, that I very much appreciate the public participation and your comments and your feedback, and encourage you, and really appreciate it. And I know the rest of the council does as well. So I want to thank everybody for coming tonight and expressing your views. And I also want to say that I was out of the country on business until yesterday. I would have responded to some of those emails. And I guess the other thing that strikes me is, as you all probably can tell, we have a lot of names, a lot of people who have weighed in on both sides of the issue, feeling very strongly. So I hope you all can appreciate that we're not taking this decision lightly, and that we have been deliberating about this issue and other safety issues in the city for a long time, and it's just not a one-sided thing. We're just trying to do the best with the resources that we have as a city, and as Alder Wood just pointed out, trying to not make more mistakes like the design of the road. Which obviously none of us, Alderwood was the only person on the council at the time. None of the rest of us were here. And I think we'd all agree that these other issues are just as important. So, can you speak to the, Alderwood? I'm wondering if you could speak to the issue of the other alternatives that have been suggested here tonight, whether it's residents getting permits or changing the hours or that kind of thing. Were those things debated at the ad hoc committee? And
No, I don't, no, we did not talk about the other alternatives. I think we sort of looked at it as being, since it was going to be temporary, that it would be better to do it as a 24/7 prohibition.
Okay.
That's certainly, one way to approach it. I guess one concern I would have about, in particular on weekdays, having these, say prohibit parking from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. and then from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. or something, is whether our police department is going to have the time to enforce that if there are vehicles parked there outside those hours. So at least during the temporary phase, I would prefer to not do that. I'm not saying I'm absolutely opposed to that compromise.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how the permit system would work. First of all, I guess I would say in terms of being able to have parties, I do know there's spoken to a resident who lives at the other end of the stretch of Winnequa up by Maywood Road, and she related that they had had a sizable dinner party, about 40 guests, and then the invitation stated there's no on-street parking at their house, and she didn't know where they all parked, but nobody complained. There was no problem. So I think there is sufficient parking on the side streets for that those rare occasions. I am going to offer an amendment eventually to exempt public safety vehicles, utility vehicles when they're working in the area, or delivery vehicles making a brief stop for a delivery like U.S. Postal Service or FedEx, that kind of brief stop.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody's having their driveway poured with concrete, I think we have to let them have a permit to be able to finish the project, assuming they can't reasonably be done elsewhere or a different way. But so.
Thank you.
Alder Spade?
Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. Can you hear me okay?
You just moved a mic in front of the phone. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Well, first, I just want to thank all the citizens who have come out at various meetings and also have written in by email, and the people over the years who have contacted members of the council or members of Public Works or Public Safety regarding these issues. I want to state to the citizens clearly that my intent is precisely to do this thoughtfully and to do it right, and not to rush into something. And our goal, the goal of the committee that the mayor has created, is to address the issue of pedestrian and bicycle safety as a city, and to design our streets in the future in ways that are consistent with standard engineering practice. And so one of the reasons that I'm very sympathetic to some of the concerns that are being expressed in opposition to this is that this temporary proposal is not intended as a permanent fix. And those of us that are involved in this issue, both on the committee and then just longer term, wanting to do the right thing for all the people trying to get around in the city, we want to make sure that we don't do what we did back in 2005 and compromise the basic engineering knowledge that we have. And that's why we brought in professionals to assist the ad hoc committee. And I thank Alder Wood for putting together that presentation. What I would add to it is that for those of us that have witnessed the presentations by the traffic engineers and then listened to people on the committee as we share these concerns, what was striking, and particularly at the public hearing, is that there's some people like myself who have been concerned about this issue for a long time. And there were members of the public who were there who were very frustrated that the really good solutions to these concerns are going to require money and engineering, and it's a much bigger deal. It's a long-term plan. It's not something we can just take a vote and accomplish an improvement to a busy corridor in the city of Monona. But what is encouraging to me about this temporary notion is that we realize we actually could improve the south end of Winnequa by banning parking most of the time, if not all of the time, so that that becomes, for now, a pedestrian corridor. It was simply a recognition that while our long-term plan needs to be thoughtful and budgeted for, there is the potential to do something now to make this a safer corridor. I agree, it doesn't address speed. It's definitely an inconvenience on those rare occasions when people do need the parking or want to have the parking. But I've also been struck by many of the public comments by people that are opposed to this who have correctly pointed out that often there's no one parked on those blocks. Like you, I notice that all the time. I'm very aware of it. Parking, when it happens, is sometimes not hazardous, but many times I've noted it when it is hazardous. But, you know, it is rare when the parked vehicle is hazardous. But I think we can all agree that we will address that potential hazard by having some sort of a ban on parking in the short term. And that is the only reason that I support this. I want our plan to be, I want that committee to work out some very thoughtfully developed short-term goals and long-term goals. But to that end, I support this temporary ban so that we, particularly in these summer months, can make it easier for people to get out there and walk the street. I'm certainly open to, I would rather in fact have a permitting process that allows exceptions than to have the time exceptions, precisely because of the concern about enforcement. But those are my comments, and I thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Alder Groupie?
I guess I'd just like to reiterate, Nancy's comments and Chad's. I appreciate that people from both sides of the aisle have come out to participate tonight. It's really important. You've given us ideas and just reinforce a lot of the ideas that we have about future directions after this first step is potentially taken to temporarily ban the parking. I also just think, I appreciated Doug having said, it's not based on past accident history. I think that would be an unfortunate metric to live by, is that we don't take action until something truly nefarious happens on our streets. And I really think that pedestrian and bike safety should be of paramount importance to all of us. So we look forward to, exploring all this with you as we continue the dialogue. But just to reiterate, it's a temporary, simple variable that we can track and could potentially make a big difference.
Anyone else? Alder Moore.
Sorry, I just, I guess this is probably for Alder Spate or Alder Wood, and that is just as it relates to the question that's been asked as to how we might assess whether or not this has had an impact? Has the committee, I'm not sure I heard whether, if you've given some thought to that as of this point.
I'd be happy to speak to that.
Okay.
So, from my perspective, the primary data point that I want us to be focused on as a community is whether or not the road has been engineered to function safely for all the people that we're hoping can use it. And so there is not a single traffic engineer that would put their stamp of approval on the design we currently have. And so for me, that's the most compelling data point you could have. I mean, I want to use an analogy, which is an imperfect one, but imagine if the Parks Department built a tennis court that was not built to the standard dimensions of a tennis court. Now, there might be some people that would play tennis on that court, even though it would not be a standard court. But, you know, we would be criticized, certainly, and it would be considered a waste of public money that we constructed a tennis court that was not to the standards of a sport that everyone plays. And similarly, we built a road, which is essentially the equivalent of a non-standard tennis court. And I realize it's not a perfect analogy, but I just use the point because, I want to thank that one citizen that showed up and read that blog, which I had stumbled on years ago myself and had not thought to go back and find it and present it. But I thought that blog post very thoughtfully laid out the problems with the road. And those are the same problems we've been dealing with as a committee, but this was just an observation of a citizen who's trying to fight around the larger Madison area. And they were, correctly pointing out that we have a really, really poorly designed stretch of road in Monona. And so for me, I'm not interested in parking bans being some sort of a fad that we're going to try to impose. I'm interested in making sure the road that we allow parking on is wide enough to accommodate parking safely. And since we do have marked bike lanes on that road, and it is part of the Lake Loop, it's simply irresponsible to pretend that it's okay to encourage cars to park there when we know cars are too wide to even fit in the space that's been allocated for parking. So for me, that fact that the design is so inadequate overcomes the question, if we had a properly designed road and then we were saying, well, but we'd like to do away with parking, I think that question, if we were really trying to solve our problems with removing parking for the long term, then that would be a really important question to have an answer to. But what I was trying to say earlier is I don't view removing parking as a fix to our problem. I do see it as definitely an improvement to the current use of the street. And so I'm willing to support it as a temporary ban. But what I really care about and what I want the community to be involved in, and I hope to sign on to, is a plan that we will adopt as part of this pedestrian and bicycle ad hoc committee process. I want us as a community to say, yes, we are going to designate these corridors as places where we're going to make some improvements, and this is our plan, and this is our proposed timeline, and we're going to obey these standards of design and safety. And we'll continue to monitor traffic and do counts of cyclists and counts of pedestrians because over time the community will change and we'll have to adapt accordingly. But right now we know that that is an unsafe stretch of road, and yet people still bike and walk on it. And yet, I mean, we do all make these choices, obviously. As one of the people said, and I agree with them, I take my kids sometimes off of the stated path of the bike loop, the lake loop, when they were younger and we would bike around the lake. I would sometimes deviate to roads that I thought were safer. And people always make decisions like that. And I don't argue with that. But I want us to make sure that that road is designed to do all the things that we want it to do. And I think as a community, we want for pedestrians to be able to safely walk on South Winnequa. We want cyclists to be able to have a lake loop that's on South Winnequa. And of course, we want motorists to be able to safely drive there. And hopefully with some speed tables that can be installed to regulate speed.
Thank you. Alderwood?
Well, one thing I did want to sort of back up and note that this project in 2006, when it was constructed, cost $2 million to do 3/4 of a mile of road. And I think that's had a lot to do with why it's taken from 2006 until 2018 to start really looking at seriously doing something with the road, because nobody wanted to spend more money on the road, basically. We'd spent a lot. I think people kind of realized through experience the mistakes that have been made in the design. But we're at that point, I guess, now. For me, in terms of evaluating whether it's a success or not, I'd say I would have preferred that we just do a permanent parking ban, not do a temporary ban. And the reason I say that is I base my support for the parking prohibition on the fact that the road simply isn't wide enough to accommodate all the uses that are there, and that's not going to change and by September 30th or whenever the temporary ban terminates. Now, I'm not going to suggest tonight that we should change it to permanent, because I don't think that would be fair to do that, but that would have been my preference. I do think it would be useful to have the police do another traffic count and speed check on that stretch of road after assuming that we adopt it, after the parking prohibition goes into place, and see if speed increases or not. Right now, the 85th percentile speed is 29 or 30 miles per hour, meaning that 85% of the people are driving 29 or 30 miles an hour or less, which it's obviously over the speed limit. It's from what I've seen in past records, it's actually slightly lower than on Dean and Nichols, but there are sidewalks there, so it's not nearly the perception of a problem. Anyway, I think so that would be one thing I would like to see, is have the speed checked again.
I think I would also like to see some kind of a survey done of both people who live there and who use the road. Any other questions? Alder Kitzlar.
Just to make it clear, so the term of temporary in maybe your perspective or Alder Spate's perspective is until the road is redesigned. I'm just trying to make sure I read this correctly.
Unless the road's widened, yeah, I wouldn't. I don't. Parking shouldn't be allowed on that street the way it's set up right now. With 34 feet of width, it's not wide enough. I mean, we've got 9-foot travel lane. That's like 2 feet below average, the standard. Parking lane's also 2 feet below standard. You know, just simply there's not enough room to park vehicles there, or not to have parking and biking and driving. So.
No, I'm not refuting that.
Right.
So to kind of build off of that, I know, Dan, I asked you a few questions by email, and I'll kind of ask them here too. He touched on one, so it was about $2 million to renovate that back in 2006. How long would it take to have this road project redone as of now? Because it's, as we've understood, it's not on the capital budget as it stands in the next 5 years, but if it were to be added, what's the process look like? How long? Your more thoughts on that?
I guess, first of all, are you asking if curb and gutter is part of that to widen the road, or within the existing boundaries that we have right now?
As far as I understand, curb and gutter would have to be included, right, to make it wider for parking.
Right, if you want to do,
bike,
right.
and-
If you want to put everything back out there the same way that it is today, but have proper widths for everything, this would be something that the engineers could, they would take a year to design it, and then the following year would be reconstruction.
Mhm.
No utilities would have to be redone. That's all good to go. So you're just looking at the redesign for the road, peeling out everything that's there as far as the surface. You would have to add road bed in the areas that you would make the road wider, and then just construction. So 2 years, design and construction.
And is there an alternative option that would include keeping the curb and gutter?
I have my opinion, like I shared with you. There's going to be a final report coming from the ad hoc bike ped committee that's going to have some capital recommendations. My opinion as the director of public works, a fix could be done for the price range of $400,000 to $500,000. That would be to remove the bump outs, mill out an inch of asphalt, and that's just because of all the markings that are there now. Perhaps install 2 to 3 intersection speed tables to address the speed concerns of people who have voiced that, and then relaying the fresh layer of asphalt, and then new pavement markings based on what city council decides. That again would take about a year to design, and then the following year to complete the work.
And would that's still, since we're working with the current curb and gutter, that wouldn't necessarily get us the width that we need, correct, to do
Right.
everything?
Right. But like I said, there might be some other recommendations coming out of the bike ped committee to address the bike ped accommodations. So.
Could I just kind of follow up on that
Sure.
question?
Alderwood, then Alderspate.
The Bridge Road intersection, which has been talked about, is that going to be reconstructed as part of in 2019?
Right. Right now, Bridge Road from Winnequa Road to Broadway is in final design at this time. It's due to be reconstructed in 2019. The intersection of Winnequa and Bridge Road will be included for reconstruction in that project. We are upsizing the water main along that portion of Bridge Road, so the intersection will be tore up. Part of the design review is looking at different configurations for that intersection, whether it be a four-way stop intersection. They're looking at a single-lane roundabout for that intersection. But the engineers and the bike ped committee do acknowledge that it's not an ideal intersection for bike and peds and vehicles going through that intersection. So it is part of it.
And the design of the intersection will be looking at how the lake loop comes over the river and connects to the route on Winnequa.
Right. The same engineer that we have for the bike ped committee is the same engineer designing Bridge Road, and that's Strand Associates. We have the same team in designing both areas, or looking at both areas.
And just one other observation, I think if there were a pathway, not just a sidewalk built, that was wide enough to accommodate both pedestrians and bicyclists, and you got both of them out of the street, then having parking on the street, isn't going to be nearly as big of an issue or concern. Whether, that's obviously going to be highly controversial, I think, to put pathway along there, but that's, some type of off-road sidewalk or pathway, I think, is definitely going to be looked at by the committee for that stretch.
Alder Spade?
Yes, so I was going to add that I had asked a question at one of our pedestrian bicycle committees regarding that intersection and the problem we have right now, that one or two of the members of the public correctly pointed out that, cyclists will stay on the north side of the bridge where there is actually a bike path, and then they make the turn and they're going the wrong way on Winnequa. The good thing about that is that it keeps the cyclists out of the intersection. The bad thing is that we don't currently have a two-way bike path on the west side of the street. And so I asked the traffic engineer if we were to put in a wide multi-use path, would that be good design? Would that be a way to solve this problem and to basically keep pedestrians and cyclists out of the intersection? Most of them, because most would be going on the Lake Loop. And their kind of off-the-cuff response was quite possibly. You still have to accommodate pedestrians and cyclists being able to go other ways through that intersection. But if it ends up looking like the best way to solve all of our problems, then I'm all for it. And my understanding is we might be able to keep the curves and have parking, as Alderwood said, on the road. The nice thing about parking on a road, when you don't have cyclists and pedestrians out in the road, is that it's just a lot safer. The problem right now on our busiest streets is that everyone's out in the pavement, and the parked cars are, creating a hazard that they wouldn't be creating if pedestrians and cyclists were on a multi-use path. So, one thing that I had asked the engineer was, how could we, if we were to do this as part of the redesign of that intersection, how could it be done in a limited manner now so that we can afford to budget for it, but still set us up for success for the long-term redesign of that road and that corridor? But I just want to say that I would absolutely support parking as part of the design of that road, provided it's part of the big picture and it works for everyone. And that's why I say really I'm not looking to ban parking willy-nilly. I just want us to have safe streets.
Thank you. Alder Kitzler.
Go ahead.
So not to get this bogged down in committees, but Public Works talked about it obviously for reasons of their authority over parking signs and banning parking. But was public safety was it brought up in that committee at all?
No.
Okay.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, and then so on Winnequa Road from Maywood to Owen, there's currently no parking, correct?
Right.
And why is that the case? Well, I'm blanking on the design. Maybe it doesn't have the bump out for the parking.
It has a different road width.
It has a different road. Okay. Sorry.
Alder Coor, did you?
I just wanted to reiterate the fact that this wasn't, when this was rolled out, it was presented as if this was based on opinion, and this isn't based on opinion. This is based on the fact that the road is too narrow. You were given the impression that we were doing this as a test because we felt that it was the right thing to do. This isn't about how we feel. This is about how the road is designed, and it's designed incorrectly. And the way to alleviate the stress on that design is to remove the parking. I think the fact that we got to this point with the incorrectly designed road was because of opinion, because we had council members on at that time who felt that the road should be a certain way. They didn't follow the plan of the engineers. And so right now what we're trying to do is take what's there in terms of the engineering and follow it. And until we can fix the road with a more permanent fix, this is one way that we can make something a little bit better. I understand it's going to cause inconvenience. And I know that inconvenience causes anger. But I hope that anger then drives you to show up and make sure that we follow through and that we actually do fix this road. I feel strongly that we shouldn't do this by opinion. So hold us to that, is my point.
Anyone else? No? Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Alder Kistler.
Sorry for waiting to see if
That's
anyone
okay.
else raised their hand. All right. So this is probably in no particular order. So sometimes, or in some comments, especially at the last meeting, a lot of people said that we rushed through it. I did a little bit more research in between last meeting and this meeting. The ad hoc committee was created on February 5th. It was mentioned, not this particular parking ban. I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about the general bike ped. And I mean, I would assume if I'm on a bike path that would be included in a bike ped study. It was mentioned on February 22nd, April 24th. The public input session was on May 8th. And then May 24th, they again asked for more input, all in the Herald Independent. Facebook, it was mentioned a number of times. And of course, it's on the website. And I know, I don't say that saying, well, you should have read all of this, different things like that. This is something that we're trying to work on. But I do get a little insulted when people say, we just don't advertise things. We are trying, and we're always open to input. And we did, hire a contractor to look at what we could do better as a city so that more citizens could hear about the variety of things. So I just wanted to put that out there as one thing. So as far as, I know we addressed this, and something that's unsettling to me a little bit is the temporary ban, and maybe it's kind of legalese of we're making it temporary now so that when we redo the road, we don't have to, create another ordinance or strike out that ordinance. But calling it temporary and then saying we're essentially going to wait until the road is redone, I think is a bit deceiving. That said, I do agree with the premise. We got to look at the facts and not opinions. The road was terribly designed, but 5 of the 6 council members were not on that council. And I'm certainly not trying to shift blame here at all. But it is the cards that we were dealt, and we do have to do something about it. It's a highly trafficked road that just that just does not have the standards that are necessary for the purposes that are set out, and that's, pedestrians, biking, and then parking as well, much less traffic. Kind of a question I have is, so whether we even consider permits for special events, if this were to pass, or weekday certain hours. What's difficult is with anything that we do is enforcement, right? And if we have this ban specifically for certain hours, those are the exact same hours our police are probably going to be in the other busy trafficked areas in the city. So I guess maybe this is for Attorney Cole. And this is just an idea that throwing out is, So if somebody were to see during a band period a vehicle that's parked illegally and took pictures of it with a timestamp, does that hold up in court, or how does that?
Yes, it doesn't need to be a police officer. I prosecute many offenses where citizens are the witnesses. Shoplifting are prosecuted, it's the testimony of the loss prevention folks. Bar fights are often the testimony of patrons, that sort of stuff. So in a case like this, I'd ask the complainant to photograph it and then come into court, testify about what they saw, and authenticate the photographs.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just trying to think of ideas of how we can enforce, these things. Because one reason I think about it is, ever since this came up, like a lot of residents, I'm highly aware. I drive that specific section from Owen to Bridge of Winnequa every day to work. And I've noticed the cars and although there's been no landscaping vehicles, amazingly enough, in the last 2 weeks, all the vehicles are all of a sudden amazingly parked as close to the curb as possible, which is the first time I've ever seen that ever, and which is great. But I'm just trying to think of different ways that if we do pass the ban, or if we pass some version of it, if there's a way that we can really make sure that we enforce it one way or another. I'm just trying to think here.
Anyone?
Yeah, I wanted to.
Alderwood.
One, to address your question about whether, what does temporary mean? My thought is that once the Ped Bike Committee completes its work and makes its report to the council, which should be this fall, then at that point would be the appropriate time to make a decision. And if it's so right now, the way it's drafted, it goes to September 30th, but gives the mayor the authority to extend it. But she has that power under the ordinances anyway. So to extend it at least until that report comes back to the council, and at that point the council can decide whether to continue it in light of the overall plan or not. Mm-hmm. In terms of the compromise on the hours that was suggested, just looking at the data that was provided by Brad Byrne when they did the counts, and the bicycle counts actually don't change a whole lot in the middle of the day, or at least they didn't last week. From 10 to 11 a.m. there were 55 bikes. At 1:30 to 2:30 there were 48. Some hours they went down to around 30, but 4:30 to 5:30 it was 55. So they really they get somewhat lower in the middle of the day, but it's just a heavily used bike route for a whole variety of reasons. So,
Anyone else? Alderwood, did you say you were going to offer an amendment?
Yes, and this would go at the end of section 1 under the now therefore clause. The language would be, I would move to adopt this language. This prohibition shall not apply to public safety vehicles, utility vehicles when the utility is working in the area, or to delivery vehicles making brief stops for a delivery.
Would that include a cement truck?
No, I don't think that would be a brief stop.
Nor would it be a utility. I mean,
Right.
they would be a private contractor,
Right.
but it certainly wouldn't be a utility vehicle.
Could you please repeat that, Alderwood?
Yeah, this prohibition shall not apply to public safety vehicles, utility vehicles when utility is working in the area.
Hold on. Okay.
Or to delivery vehicles making brief stops for a delivery.
Got
Got it. Thank you.
So is that a motion?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Alder Kitzler.
Either for this or for the general one, what are your thoughts on offering permits or those types of considerations for residents along that line, whether it's for the cement trucks or otherwise?
So, well, let's set the construction type vehicles aside. I would not be in favor of a permit system because they're still obstructing, it's still going to be the same problem. They're going to have a permit, so they wouldn't get a ticket, but the number of bikes doesn't really vary all that much by time of day, which is kind of surprising to me, on a weekday even. And it's even considerably higher on weekends. So I don't know. I was gonna ask Dan whether if a contractor is performing work anywhere and they need to occupy part of the street, what's the process? Are they required to come to the city to get authorization to do that, or how does that work?
We have the street right-of-way permit that is for work that occurs between the two right-of-way limits, typically 12 to 15 feet behind the curb on both sides. So if the driveway apron is being replaced, then that company will have a right-of-way permit, and the cement truck will be authorized to be in the road. A driveway that is being replaced does not need a permit, I believe, from the building inspector. But once they get into the street right-of-way, then they do need our permit. You know, on basically every road in Monona, you're going to have a cement truck, you're going to have asphalt trucks replacing driveways. They're going to be in the road, and you do see them almost daily on parts of the road where it's the drive lane only. Typically, those contractors will have flagmen, or they'll be watching for traffic to help signal them along. So I don't know, in this instance, when you bring up a concrete truck that'll be temporary parked in the driving lane, it all depends if PD is going to be there to watch that or not, but typically they will have their own staff helping out with traffic. You're going to have that no matter where you're at in the city.
Right, so that process is already in place.
I think Attorney Cole has something to add.
I was asked a question about cement trucks specifically earlier today, and one thing to keep in mind is, at least the ordinance that's in front of you all prohibits parking. Parking is certainly different than standing. Yeah. Cement trucks, at least to my knowledge, and God knows I'm not a construction expert, but they tend to, they're standing, they're occupied while they're awaiting something. That wouldn't be prohibited here. I mean, this does not prohibit the stopping of vehicles that remain occupied. So, at least in my view, a cement truck could pull to the side of Winnequa Road, and while it is occupied, stay there awaiting whatever, the project or whatever. And that would be true of any of it. It would be true of cab drivers, delivery trucks, as long as it's occupied, that sort of thing. So I think it's important to keep in mind that difference. Also, with respect to permitted activities, if a contractor has a building permit issued from the city to do something that implicates, a vehicle temporarily being in the right-of-way to fulfill that construction, that would be authority from the city to do that, on a temporary basis. So as to those two things, I don't think this ordinance, as it's drafted now, would impact those two things.
If I can ask them, so the amendment really wouldn't be necessary?
Well, your amendment, I think, would be pertinent for a couple things. Public safety, I don't think it would be. I think police and fire are authorized. They're city vehicles. They can operate within the right of way. Utility vehicles, if they're out of their vehicle they can work within their easement. And many times utilities have easements within our right-of-way. That sort of, depends on what they're doing. So your amendment would be relevant to that. Same with delivery trucks. I mean, the UPS driver pulls to the side, grabs the package, and runs into the home to deliver it. He's not standing, he's parking. So absent your amendment, that UPS vehicle would be in violation. With your amendment, it would not.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, I guess I will then call the question on Alderwood's amendment. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the amendment passes. Now we are back to the original motion with the amendment included. Alder Kitzler.
Not to put you on the spot, but I know budgeting is coming up, and your thoughts on this potentially being included in the capital budget in the next
The planning
year or
for
two?
this?
Yeah.
I have to see what the other proposals are and evaluate them all together. So we have different, several things that are priorities, and we're just going to have to see how they shake out with what committees have proposed and what departments have proposed, and take it from there. I certainly would like to do something sooner than later about this, though. So, anyone else? I'm sorry.
And just to reiterate, so the timeline for the bike ped action items would be this fall, early fall, so that it could potentially be included in the capital budget. Potentially.
Right, yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, then I will ask anyone in favor to please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, the next item is item G1B, consideration of ordinance 6-18-701, establishing no parking here to corner on Owen Road, also put forth by the Ad hoc Pedestrian and Bicycle Committee. Is there a motion to approve this?
Move approval.
Second.
Mr. Stefani.
Thank you, Mayor. This appears tonight for the second reading as well. It did go to the June 6th Public Works Committee and did receive the recommended approval for this. The pedestrian and bicycle safety at this location, at the recommendation of the Pedestrian and Bicycle Ad hoc Committee, staff is requesting no parking here to corner be established for a distance of 20 feet from the end of the bump out. This is as you exit Winnequa Road, going eastbound on Owen Road for the first 20 feet.
Anyone have any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
On to new business. Thank you, Dan. Item G2A, consideration of renewal applications for 2018, 2019 Class A fermented malt beverage and Class A liquor licenses for Trista Holdings LLC, 1853 Durst Valley Road, Mount Horeb, Wisconsin, 53572-2756, doing business as Trista on the Water at 320 West Broadway, put forth by the License Review Committee. This is started for immediate approval.
I'll move to suspend the rules and take this out of order.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
I'll move approval.
Second.
So the reason this is being considered separately, this is at Trista. They have a small sort of convenience store on the premises that sells beer and liquor. And there was one of the committee members actually had been there for a meeting and noticed that that area wasn't always staffed, and that so that people could go in and take, and serve themselves of whatever they had there. So we called them in to talk about it. They agreed to temporarily, they're going to make sure that if they're not staffing it, they have a metal gate that they can just close off the whole thing. But a better solution with, I think, Joan, did they say within 30 days?
Yes.
That they would have a separate container for the alcohol that would be locked, and so that they would have to be there in order for anybody to have access to it, and that addressed the concerns the committee had.
Anyone else? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 2B, consideration of application for 2018-2019 Class B liquor license for Mr. Brew's Tap House Monona LLC, doing business as Mr. Brew's Tap House at 301 West Broadway, Suite B, Monona, Wisconsin 53716, also put forth by the License Review Committee.
Move to suspend the rules and take this out of order.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Move approval.
Okay. Is there a, I'm sorry. Is there a
Second.
second?
Did you second?
Was there a
Second,
second?
yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
Thank you.
Before I just wanted to read, I'm not sure where I should have read this, but we have received several emails, all in support of this resolution as well, so I just am going to read the names of those. May 30th, we received one from Laura Heineke. I do not have her address. June 3rd, Shane Spurl of Monona did not give his address. June 5th, Edmund and Julie Throckmorton at 5212 Midmore Road. June 16th, Eric Bunting, who is the manager of the America Inn in Monona. And June 17th, Steve Dorn of 6430 Bridge Road, Suite 230, all contacted us to tell us that they were in favor of this motion. Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
So, we are open to discussion.
Is it possible to ask a question about one aspect of the application?
Sure.
Sure.
So, I noticed in the memo that there is a specific cocktail list that's been approved by corporate Stephen Day, the president. And the mock cocktail list with which you provided us is substantially larger. Are you somewhere in the process of requesting approval for that? You know, where do we stand with what the final craft cocktail menu will look like?
Sure. My name's Jay Clements, Mr. Brew's Tap House, 103 West Broadway. That actually, the address that's on that list that you read on is wrong. It says 301. But to your question, the original cocktail list was put out as the Alderman Wood was asking in the License Review Committee on the first portion of what we were looking to do based on those cocktails. We originally had a pre-approved list, and what I told the License Review Committee was they put together a list of liqueurs that were previously approved by the franchise to let kind of set a standard of what we wanted to put out. Since that point and before the License Review Committee, we put together a mock-up of a draft of what we would like to have it look like and what we would like to do. Some of those liqueurs are not yet approved, but we would like to find something in that realm to approve. And it's an ever kind of growing list of liqueurs that can be approved from the franchise, if that makes sense.
So it's just sort of an ongoing.
So it's I myself serve on a advisory board to Mr. Brews, and we're looking to. This is what I would like to see our handcrafted cocktail list, as well as some of the whiskeys and bourbons that we would like to serve. I would like it to look like to mimic what we do on a beer standpoint.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I guess maybe just one or two. Just to clarify one point that's come up before, there are either 13 or 14 Mr. Brew's franchises.
There's 13 currently, yes.
11 of those are in Wisconsin?
Yes, sir.
Right. And how many do you have an ownership interest in?
I have 2.
That's the one in Monona and
the one in Monona and the one on the west side on Junction Road in Madison.
Okay.
Did you have an, oh, I'm
No,
sorry.
I was just looking through the minutes, but the minutes from the License Review Committee meetings were included in the packet, and in particular, the last meeting last week, we sort of went through a number of the points, and we didn't really come up with anything new. I thought we maybe clarified some points, but the committee was still strongly in support.
Anyone else? Alder Kitzler?
So we have, just to be clear, we have 3 licenses of this category, one of which is for riverfront development, and then we have 2 additional ones, right? Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Anyone else? Alder Moore?
Yeah, since this came before us a few months ago, I'm just wondering if Joan or someone could explain, because my understanding was that at least, in terms of coming up again, that potentially it could only be done on an annual basis, and now we're seeing it. So could you clarify what the process or procedure is around that, or
I
what
think-
the ordinance is around
Is it
that?
for this is for the next year, is that correct?
Right. This is when a license is denied, they can reapply when it's denied for a new license. This one is new for the next licensing year, which starts July 1st.
Okay.
They withdrew the request for this license in this licensing year, so it's been withdrawn.
Got it. So it's a licensing year issue, not a year as in when they last applied. Got
Right.
it. Got it.
Anyone else? Alder Kuhr?
I just had a comment. I went to the Licensing Review Committee meeting last week, which I found helpful. I did have some concerns, but not particularly with their application. My concern is that we have a finite number of these licenses, and I don't feel like as a council we have a good plan or a more strict set of criteria for distributing these licenses. So I'd like to maybe head up reviewing as to how we make decisions. I respect the committee's decision, and I know that they have insight based on their expertise as the committee, but I would also like to see the council take an interest in these licenses, because we have the potential to bring in some development into Monona in the next several years with some new spaces that are becoming available, and I just would like to see us maybe take a more active interest.
Okay. Anyone else?
I just would concur
Alder
with.
Moore?
Yeah, I would just concur with Jennifer. I think it would be helpful for us to have a kind of a bigger picture view of and set of criteria, because it just seems to in terms of how it might impact business, or whether or not a license is impacted business. It just seems like we're kind of it's not perhaps as rigorous as it might be to help sort through, and it is a finite resource.
Alder Kitzler?
I'll just say, that's kind of why I clarified how many licenses we have. If we were down to 1, I think I might have a few more questions. But, even if I had those questions, something that I keep bouncing back and forth in my head is, this is a great business that we have currently here. And we don't know what's coming down the pike in any which way. And I would hate to see, a current business that wants to expand be punished for something that might be 1, 2, 3 years down the road or more. But certainly, I tend to agree that it would be nice to have a better picture. But I also know it's really hard to have that picture. And so, certainly asking the question is helpful, and seeing what we can do and seeing what questions we can ask further is helpful. But at this point, I'm fully supportive of granting this license.
Okay. Anyone else?
Doug?
Yeah, I do.
Doug?
Yeah. I just would note that we do have a list of 17 factors that we, when we get a new application, ask the applicants to complete. So that would be at least a starting point for if we want to, and I think certainly those could be improved and fleshed out. It's something that was developed a few years ago from a previous attempt at doing this. So I guess my preference would be maybe for council members to make suggestions and have the committee develop the criteria, but I'm not sure if that's what your other alders are talking about, or do you want the council to do it directly, or?
I don't want to take away from the power of the committee. I respect their interest. However, I think it's a discussion that the council should have. I do see that we do have the 17 question response in our packet, and I do think that's a place to start. There's a point to having the committee and having them make decisions. Certainly they have that expertise. However, I also would like to see the council have the discussion.
Right. Yeah, I think it would be useful to have the council, review and, sign off on whatever criteria were developed, because I'm pretty sure these criteria were just something that we developed at the committee that I don't believe ever came to the council.
Alder Kitzler.
So this is kind of a process question. Sorry, you have to go through this. So when a business applies, what is the communication that they receive, or what's the process that they know what meetings to attend or what they could potentially attend, or that type of thing? Making sure that they know all the resources they have and have all the avenues open to them, whether they're a bigger business or a smaller business.
I guess I'd let the city clerk answer that.
The process is pretty hands-on. We talk quite directly to the applicant. I explained that the License Review Committee meets once a month, the council meets twice a month. When they meet, when I would need the application in because of my publication requirements. They're given, I have a packet for new businesses that have all of the forms that they need to fill out that are required by law, and then in addition, that 17 item list is included. They will come to the License Review Committee initially to be vetted, and then if the committee needs more from them, they're brought back. They're not presented to the council until they've been fully reviewed by the License Review Committee. And applicants are told from the start, it is the council's final decision. They do need to present themselves and go through hoops. We don't just rubber stamp. So there is quite a process, but it is quite a bit of my communication directly to them. Included in the packet that they receive are liquor license laws for liquor license holders. So there are many regulations and rules beyond our own. And then, of course, the quota issue. I'm always making it very clear to any hard liquor license applicants that there is a limited number of those licenses. We are bound by law by that, and they may or may not be granted. So nobody's ever guaranteed anything until the council has made its decision. So there is a lot of interaction.
No, I appreciate hearing that, and I certainly wasn't questioning the process at all. I just wanted to make sure that
They're told.
obviously they get all the information. They have a lot of, I don't know what else to say, but hand-holding throughout the process. Yes. And make sure that they know, to show up and make their case. So, no, I appreciate it.
And I would encourage any council member who's interested in this to do like Jennifer Coeur did and attend a meeting and see what happens. So, anything else? Okay, then I will call the question. Anyone or everyone in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Okay, next item 2C, consideration of application for 2018-2019 Beer Garden, Badger Bowl Incorporated, 506 East Badger Road, Madison, Wisconsin, 53713-2121, doing business as Monona Village Lanes, 208 Owen Road. This is adding an additional date, and it's coming from the License Review Committee. This is also started for immediate approval.
I'd like to move to take this out of order.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Alder Wood, did you want to explain anything about this, or?
I think the diagram on page 92 of the packet shows the area where the rib cook-off would take place. It would be taking up roughly half of the parking lot, I think, and they would have maintaining a fire lane that they worked out with the fire chief, fencing around the event. Haven't experienced any problems with any of their other beer garden events. The owner, Kevin Carey, is here if you have questions.
Owner, but unless it's bad, then.
Alder Kitzler.
I know there's some businesses on the side. I don't know if there's a shared parking agreement or if this is all on the, when you're looking at it.
There is an agreement.
Okay.
During off hours we use each other.
Perfect. Cool.
Anyone else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you for your patience. Item 2D, consideration of temporary Class B fermented malt beverage retailer's license for Madison Scouts Forward Performing Arts, President Greg Aubie, 2935 South Fishhatchery Road, number 401, Madison, Wisconsin, 53711, for the period of July 7th, 2018, also put forth by the License Review Committee. Is there a motion to take this out of order?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay. Alder Wood?
So this is the Madison Scouts, or they want to have basically a sort of a party, essentially, as I understood it, mainly for their alumni. This year's event actually is taking place in Waukesha, because they usually do it at Middleton's Stadium, which apparently is under reconstruction or expansion or something. But they want to still have the party here. It's a little bit unusual in that they're not selling the beer, but they want to get it from a wholesaler, and the wholesaler said they needed a permit in order to buy the equipment or rent the equipment from them. So.
Any questions? Alder Kitzler?
Sorry. So if they're
You're saying
held,
sorry a lot.
Sorry. Yeah. So if they're getting a license, a temporary license, are they held to similar standards as serving? I'm just trying to think, if you get it at a wholesaler, do they then have to have a bartender to hand it out?
If you look at the application, there's a bartender section listed,
Yeah.
and there has to be somebody there.
Okay,
yes.
yeah, I saw the section. I was just making
Yep.
sure that it was.
I think they're going to have more than one, from what they said at the meeting.
Anyone else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next up, item 2F, consideration of resolution 18-6-2273, approving the reallocation of HVAC repair funds to perform retro commissioning, engineering, inspection, and report. Put forward. I'm sorry. Sunny lives further away. Sorry. I'm sorry. Item 2E, consideration of resolution 18-6-2274, approval of a two-lot certified survey map, CSM, for the Yahara Commons General Development Plan, put forth by the city planner. Is there a motion to take this out of order?
Move to take this item out of order.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Thank you. This is a 2-lot CSM for the Yahara Commons development. The council previously approved a 4-lot CSM for that development, but that 4-lot CSM certified survey map did not include the property at 6418 Bridge Road. That property has now been acquired by the city, and it's planned for use in a public street for the overall development. So this CSM now shows that being included and dedicated to the city for public use, and it gives us that full 80-foot width of that new street, which includes the 2 travel lanes and parking for that area. There's also a lot line adjustment shown on the CSM, and that includes exchange of some property between 3 parcels. So the hotel site will gain a little bit from that 6418 Bridge Road parcel, and they'll exchange land with Monona Bank. There's some reconfiguration going on with the dumpster area between the 2 parcels in order to accommodate the new development. Public Works Committee did recommend approval of this on June 6th, and Plan Commission approval is required. That will happen next Monday, June 25th. So this resolution's written for council approval pending that Plan Commission action next week.
Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Now it's your turn, Brad. Item F, consideration of resolution 18-6-2273, approving the reallocation of HVAC repair funds to perform retro commissioning, engineering inspection, and report put forth by the city administrator.
So just
First of all, is there a motion to take this out of order?
I'll move.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
All right.
All right, just a really quick history on the original project for 2018. What was budgeted was $225,000. $175,000 was meant for HVAC repairs at the library, and $50,000 meant for HVAC repairs at City Hall. At that point in time, we had gotten 2 quotes, one from Commercial Air and one from Kilgist. Both quotes came back very close to the same amount for each set of repairs at each facility. It was recommended that further repairs were needed, but there was efficiencies in having a crane here only once to remove the rooftop units from the library and City Hall, and to place new units at the library and City Hall. Essentially, you wouldn't have to rent a crane more than once. That being said, and given all the issues that we've had historically with this facility and the rooftop unit, number 5 in particular, and City Hall, what we had found last spring was that the rooftop unit had been running through the winter, and that's an air conditioning unit. And so the air was on while the heat was on. And now there's seemingly there's a mechanical issue with that particular unit at City Hall. So given all those items, we decided that maybe it would be best that we removed them all. And in addition to that, they're all fairly old. The units are either at or past their standard industrial standard average useful life cycle. So at this point, the fear is that you keep pumping money into these units to replace them or repair them. And at what point do you stop putting money into them and just purchase a new unit and put it up on the roof? Given all that information, we budgeted what we did. It was approved, and then in November of last year, post being approved, we had a new member on the committee, facilities committee, who had recommended at that time that what if we looked at doing a retro commissioning study, which involves having a mechanical engineer come in and do a comprehensive review and inspection of the HVAC systems, both here and at City Hall. At that point in time, we had not budgeted for it, and given the age and everything else, we thought, well, we'd move forward with the project. We went to issue an RFP or draft an RFP this spring, and we got another new member on the committee who is an HVAC expert, and he recommended that yes, removing and replacing those units is smart given their age, However, you may find more issues down the line from the units, which could cost more money that we didn't budget for in 2019 or 2018. And he recommended that, yes, you can replace the units, but you still probably would need to do some sort of inspection to know exactly what the issues are down the line from the rooftop units themselves. Given that, we come here today to ask that we reallocate $20,000 to have Strand engineers or a comparable engineer, another engineer, come in and do a retro commissioning study, and to prioritize the most necessary projects now, next year, and the following subsequent years. To phase in these improvements so that at some point in the next couple of years, we have a state-of-the-art, up-to-date, efficient mechanical system for HVAC here and at City Hall.
Okay. Are there any questions? Alder Moore.
I just want to make a comment. Let's see how the best way to put this. So, just as a point of information, I, as you know, chair the Facilities Committee, and I also chair the Sustainability Committee. And retro commissioning is something that we've talked about in both committees. And in fact, I have a study that was provided to me by a member of the Sustainability Committee where retro commissioning was done at UW for UW hospitals, and as a result of the study, they literally are saving $1 million a year. So the study more than paid for itself in by a long shot. And a lot of it was simply, so retro commissioning is really reviewing the entire system and recalibrating and rebalancing and making improvements to the system that as I said should pay dividends. So I'm pleased to see that we have the resources available or in our existing repair budget, and wholeheartedly support the effort.
Just to clarify, though, this isn't in our existing repair budget. This is coming out of the money we had approved to spend on replacing these pieces.
Right, but I'm sorry, not out of the repair budget, but out of the funds that have already been approved.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Brad. Next item, 2G, consideration of resolution 18-6-2275, approving participation in a grant opportunity with the Office of Energy Innovation for a renewable energy feasibility study put forth by the city administrator. Is this is also started for immediate approval?
Move to take this item out of order.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Move to approve.
Second.
Second.
Brad?
Okay, so the Office of Energy Innovation grant that we're looking at, it would fund what is essentially a feasibility study to look into growing or advancing renewable energy for the city of Monona, for the municipal operations side of the city of Monona in particular. It doesn't mean it won't look into other options, but that was the focus of the grant for this particular grant. We also need to look at our current solar program. In 2 years, we have the option to purchase the solar panels, or to extend the lease program, or to ask them to remove them from the rooftops. This feasibility study would also look at a cost-benefit analysis of that as well. So, all in short, the cost share for this grant that's being proposed is staff time and supplies, potential supplies. So there would be no upfront actual monetary cost outside of staff time.
Any questions? This is just approving your applying for the grant, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Participating.
Yep, to participate, sorry, yep.
Any questions?
I
think it sounds great.
Alder
So that was uncommitted staff time. This was not time that you were planning to be using for other projects, correct?
It would be.
Okay.
It would land within the time that I have available to do this particular type of project.
Okay.
Someone else have a question?
I just made the comment. I think it sounds
Sure.
great.
Oh, okay.
Exciting.
Anyone else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Item 2G, consideration of resolution 18-6-2272, authorizing a contract with Strand Associates for engineering services for the Riverfront Redevelopment Park Plaza, put forth by the city administrator. Is there a motion to take this out of order?
I would take it out of order.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
A second, okay. April?
This task order is for professional engineering of the final design for the implementation of the Riverfront Park and Plaza project plan submitted by Strand Associates for $70,700. Strand will help permit and select final amenities and furnishings and prepare engineering drawings and bidding documents for some of the features that will include erosion control, landscaping, lighting, stormwater, a floating dock, and hardscaping. The funds will be included in the TIF 9 project accounting and would need to be borrowed in a few months along with other project expenses for the riverfront. There is a breakdown of the $1.7 million running project estimate for the park features. It's a bit of a moving target as we're still in the planning stages, but that's in there for your information.
Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Now, item J.
Aye.
I'm sorry, aye. My eyes are glazing over. Convene in closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute section 19.85(1)(e), deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. This is regarding a settlement offer regarding 6418 Bridge Road. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
I'll second.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Spate?
Aye.
Alder Wood?
Aye.
Alder Kitzler?
Aye.
Alder Quirk?
Aye.
Alder Groupie?
Aye.
Alder Moore?
Aye.
We discussed in closed session.
I would move that we, that settlement discussions continue consistent with direction given in closed session.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Reports of committees, commissions, etc. Alder Moore.
Nothing to report.
Alder Spate.
No report, but since my face is not there, I just want to say that I am extremely proud of this council, and I was happy to be on the phone tonight.
Good.
Thank you all for your comments.
Thank you for making arrangements to join in. Alder Wood.
Just that the concert that was supposed to take place in Winnequa Park tonight was obviously canceled and rescheduled to June 27th.
Alder Kitzler.
Only that if you haven't checked out Wildhaven, you should. It's an amazing park, and we were there after the last Parks and Rec Board, and there was a number of neighbors that came by and said how great it was. So check it out. It's the best view of Madison in the area.
Alder Coor.
I would concur with Alder Kitzler's assessment of the new Wildhaven Park. We brought the girls there yesterday, and it was just gorgeous, and they enjoyed getting down by the water.
Alder Groupie.
Third Wildhaven Park. It's awesome.
City Clerk Andrews.
No report, Mayor?
City Administrator Little.
No report.
Just a couple things. I noted that Mary Lou Bertzik passed away. She was a longtime chair of the Landmarks Commission and had also served as chief inspector at St. Stephen's in the mornings for quite a while. So we extend our sympathies to her family. There will be no meeting on July 2nd, and I am leaving the country on June 28th and will return July 16th. So Alder Wood will serve as acting mayor in my stead.
But we may or may not have a meeting on July 2nd.
Yeah, we may end up having to have a meeting on July 2nd. Who knows? He'll have the power, so.
You're gone, what's your dates gone again?
June 28th to July 16th. So he may be chairing the July 16th meeting. I'm not sure if I'm going to be back in time for that or not, but. Anyway, we have 2 appointments. Mary Murrell to the Landmarks Commission, effective immediately through April 2020. Lisa Gunlock to the Public Works Committee, effective immediately through April 2020. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move. I'll second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Appointments are approved. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.